are in listen-only mode.
So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to EVPA's webinar on EU funding. More precisely, this session will try to address the way venture philanthropy and social investment practitioners can access EU funding. So it's really a pleasure to welcome you all to this session today. My name is Elinor Depret, and I'm the Public Affairs Manager at the European Venture Philanthropy Association, speaking to you from our office in Brussels. So before we dive into the topic of today's webinar, I would like to share with you a few housekeeping rules. Throughout the session, you will be able to open or hide the control panel, which is the console that appears on the right-hand side of your screen. Note that the control panel automatically collapses when it's not being used, but you can keep it visible via the View menu on the top. In the Join Audio section of the control panel, you should tick the microphone and speakers option if you are joining the webinar through the internet. If you are using the telephone instead, you must choose telephone, and then you'll receive the PIN code to access. If you encounter any technical issues, please don't hesitate to contact my colleague Evelina here at EVPA's office. You can see the number to reach her here on this slide, or also on our website. There will be a Q&A session during the second part of this webinar, during which our panelists will answer all the questions you might have. So if you do have a question, you can write it down in the questions section of the control panel, and this throughout the session. Please do not forget to clearly mention to whom you would like to address it. All written questions will be directed to the right panelist during the Q&A time. And if your question has not been answered during the webinar, feel free to contact us via email afterwards, and we'll do the necessary follow-up. You can also use that question section to let us know about any technical problem while connecting to the webinar. Also, since the number of participants to this webinar is quite high, we are keeping all participants muted. Last but not least, this session is being recorded, and you should be able to watch the recording as of next week. For that, please visit the EU webinar series section of EVPA's website. Okay, now that these housekeeping details are clear, we can officially start this webinar. Let me first give you a quick word about the European Venture Philanthropy Association. As most of you already know, EVPA is a membership organization currently gathering more than 180 members based all across Europe. These include foundations, social investors, academic and financial institutions, as well as service providers. Since 2014, EVPA is also developing its policy dimension, which relies on two main pillars. First, EVPA is acting as a European thought leader, voicing the concerns and expectations of its member to European as well as national policymakers. Second, EVPA is progressively building a hub for national policymaking, gathering and sharing the policy initiatives that are being undertaken in many European countries. Don't hesitate to visit our website for more detailed information about EVPA's policy activities. And as you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, this EU funding webinar is part of what we call the EU webinar series, which is one of the activities we are implementing as part of a partnership we have with the European Commission. So to address this topic of EU funding for venture philanthropy and social investment, EVPA is very pleased to gather great experts today. They will be introduced in a minute, but you can already have an idea of the various organizations they belong to here, from the European Commission and the European Investment Fund to the Portuguese Social Investment Lab. So my name is Elinor Depret, and I'll be moderating this session with my colleague Lisa Ehrenberger, who is the Research and Policy Director here at EVPA. She will introduce our panelists as well as today's program. Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elinor. So as Elinor explained, I'm the Research and Policy Director at EVPA, and I'm based in Barcelona, so I'm connecting from here, and I'm very pleased to be with you. So next slide, please. We have a really good collection of speakers here today. We have Andrea Meyer, who's team leader of entrepreneurship and microfinance at the DG for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion from the European Commission. We have Cristina Dumitrescu, who's microfinance investment manager at the European Investment Fund. We also have Jaime Vera Calonge, who's investment manager of social impact investing at the European Investment Fund. And we also have Joana Cruz Ferreira, who's social investment analyst at Social Investment Lab at the Instituto de Empreendedorismo Social in Portugal. And the way we plan to run this webinar is really in 4 different parts. So the first part will address the European Programme for Employment and Social Innovation and its Social Entrepreneurship Guarantee. And here we have 2 speakers, Andrea Meyer, who's from the Commission, who will give more of the policy perspective. And then we have Cristina Dumitrescu, who will explain how that policy is now implemented by the EIF. In the second part of the webinar, we will talk about the social impact accelerator of the European Investment Fund that will be then explained by Jaime Vera Calonge from EIF. And in the third part, we will have a concrete story of the support from European structural funds. And this is really on the recipient side. So Joana will be explaining how in Portugal they have accessed this funding. And finally, we'll have an interactive Q&A session, which Eleanor and I will be moderating.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for this introduction. It's really now time to start this webinar. And for this first presentation, I'm really happy to welcome Andrea Meyer, who is working at DG Employment at the European Commission. Andrea is sitting next to me in our office in Brussels. And without further ado, I'll leave you the floor, Andrea.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. This presentation is about the Easy Guarantee, and actually this webinar is very timely because the Easy Guarantee will become available next week. The Easy Guarantee is part of the Programme for Employment and Social Innovation. This is why I would like to first explain the setup of this EU program before then going into the details of the Easy Guarantee. The Programme for Employment and Social Innovation has 3 axes. One is called Progress Axis, one Euros, and the third one is the one that we are interested in here now. It's the one on support for social entrepreneurship and actually also for microfinance. The budget for this third axis is 193 million. 45% will be spent for microfinance, 45% for social entrepreneurship finance, and the rest is for cross-cutting issues. That means that we also can move money between the 2. For social entrepreneurship, we have a double objective under EASY. Firstly, facilitating access to finance for social enterprises, and then secondly, also helping the development of the social finance market. If now we have a look at the budget of the EASY financial instruments, you can see that there's a part for microfinance, at least 86 million, and the same amount at least for social entrepreneurship. And for the guarantee that we are speaking here now, we have 40 million. This is in line with the ex-ante study on the social finance market that was done explicitly for the design of this instrument. Now let's go to the guarantee. The Commission has entrusted the European Investment Fund, EIF, with the implementation of this Easy Guarantee. So we have the EU budget, the 40 million that I mentioned before, which goes to the European Investment Fund, who then gives guarantees to intermediaries. So this means that the partner organizations in the member states and in some other countries. I will come to that later. And these intermediaries finance social enterprises. we have not only a guarantee but also counter guarantees. In this case, we also work with national guarantee institutions that come in between the European Investment Fund and the intermediaries. So what you have to retain from this one, that is, it's an indirect implementation via intermediaries, and that is done by the European Investment Fund on behalf of the European Commission. Now we'll have a closer look at this part, the relation between the intermediaries and the final recipients, so this means the social enterprises. Intermediaries, who can be an intermediary? It can be public or private entities, so here we are quite open. They have to be established and operating in one or more participating countries. We have so far, of course, the EU member states, the 28 EU member states, plus Turkey, plus Iceland. Other countries might join easy later. Actually, it could be the candidate countries and the potential candidate countries that have to sign an agreement with the European Commission to join the EASY program, and in this case, the social entrepreneurship support would also become available in these countries. Now, about the portfolio covered and the market segment. The guarantees cover debt financing of up to 500,000 euros. Debt financing is defined widely here. This includes mezzanine, it includes subordinated debt, leases, profit-sharing loans, whatever. So the list is not closed. And then we have up to 500,000 euros. Here you can see a major difference with the SIA, the Social Impact Accelerator, that you will hear about later in this webinar, because the SIA targets a higher market segment. So these investments have to go to social enterprises with a turnover and balance sheet of maximum 30 million euros. This is somewhere in between a small and a medium-sized enterprise, and they must not be listed on the stock market. If we now have a closer look at the social enterprise definition, there has to be a social dimension, obviously, social aim as primary objective, then an entrepreneurial dimension with continuous economic activity. And then for the governance dimension, I know that there are many different ways of seeing social enterprises. What we have in the European definition explicitly are two things: the limits on profit distribution and the social impact measurement. Limited profit distribution means that a maximum of 1/3 of the profits may be distributed, and it has to be a rolling average over 3 years. And profit distribution can only happen if a substantial part of the predefined impact has been achieved. Any profit distribution has to be in accordance with the social enterprise's predefined rules and procedures. Second point on the social impact measurement, there has to be an agreement between the intermediary and the social enterprise on how to measure. And then the social enterprises make reports to the intermediary on this basis. Now, what are we looking for when you make when an intermediary makes an application? He has to demonstrate some kind of added value. Otherwise, it would not make sense to put EU funding in this. So there should be some more favorable features for the social enterprises, be it in terms of interest rates or guarantee fees, if it's a counter guarantee. Longer maturities, for instance, or reduced collateral requirements. Now, of course, this is sometimes difficult to demonstrate if you're just starting. Then we could also accept that there's, for instance, a new category of social enterprises. For instance, enterprises that could not be financed before because of risk considerations, or you are going into a new geographic area, or there's a new type of debt financing, let's say subordinated loans in addition to the usual loans that have been given before. Now, for the part of the implementation, when the relation between the European Investment Fund and the intermediaries, I will not go into this now, because you will hear Christina from the European Investment Fund later, and she will explain this. I will only say something about the next steps. So we have a delegation agreement with the European Investment Fund that will be signed next week. and the EIF will publish a call for expression of interest on the website. Christina will explain more in detail. And then an intermediary can apply. There's a pre-selection and due diligence done by the EIF, and then the final selection and approval by the EIF. The Commission has a veto right here, but normally if there's not any big problem, we will not interfere. Thanks a lot for your attention. I would just wanted to give here still the contact details of Per-Erik Eriksson from the EIF team, who is dealing with the applications for the guarantees. And he explicitly asked me to also put his phone number, so you're encouraged to really get in touch with him. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Andrea. This is great, and it's true that it's fantastic to have to hear that the guarantee will be launched next week. You can also count on EVPA to spread the news, and I hope it's going to be very successful. So it's a good transition because you gave us a very good overview from the social entrepreneurship guarantee from the Commission's point of view. And now I will leave the floor to Christina Dumitrescu, who is working at the European Investment Fund, and she'll give us maybe a bit of a more technical presentation of that guarantee mechanism. Christina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this, and thank you very much for inviting me as a panelist to this webinar. If we can start rolling over the presentation, I will make a short presentation on the EIF. We are a specialist provider of risk finance for the benefit of small and medium-sized enterprises across Europe. We are part of the EIB group. Our central mission is to support Europe's small and medium-sized businesses by helping them to access finance. To this end, we aim at satisfying existing and future market needs by designing innovative financial products addressed to our partners, banks, guarantee, leasing and microfinance institutions, private equity and venture capital funds, social impact funds, like Jaime will present later on, which act as our financial intermediaries. Next slide, please. We are a public-private partnership with a unique shareholding structure combining public and private investors. Our shareholding structure was modified in the year 2000 when the EIB became the majority shareholder, culminating in the formation of the EIB group. We benefit from a AAA rating from the 3 major rating agencies and also have the status of a multilateral development bank. These 2 characteristics are very important for the guarantee products that EIF is offering because it allows financial institutions to apply a 0% risk weighting under Basel II and III to the assets guaranteed by EIF. Next slide, please. It's a brief presentation of the inclusive finance, which was broadly recognized as critical in reducing poverty and achieving inclusive economic growth. Various studies are showing that when people participate in the financial system, they are better able to start and expand businesses, invest in education, manage risks, and absorb financial shocks. Access to financial services increases savings, empowers women, boosts productive investments and consumption. In addition, it may help reduce income inequality and accelerate economic growth. That's why we say that inclusive finance results in both economic and social results. The next slide will show you the range of counterparts EIF is working with in order to support inclusive finance. And as Andrea pointed out earlier, the next slide is a very brief introduction into the EASY program. The program for employment and social innovation, funded by DG Employment, will be a successor to Progress Microfinance for the microfinance window and will have a dedicated window for social entrepreneurship, which is of our interest today. Next slide will show you the map of accessible countries that have access to the EASY program. While the next one will show you the definition of the social entrepreneurship, which I will not insist on because Andrea presented it very well. So let's go to the free of charge guarantee, the next slide. This is the main financial instrument that will be launched next week. It's a free of charge guarantee in the sense there is no guarantee premium to be charged to the intermediary. But this benefit should be transferred to the final recipient, as Andrea pointed it out earlier, in the forms of lower interest rates, lower collateral requirements, enhanced access for vulnerable groups, or going into a remote geographical area. The guarantee rate could go up to 80% on a loan-by-loan basis, with a cap rate of up to a maximum of 30% measured at portfolio level. This cap rate will be based on the expected losses of that respective portfolio. A very important concept to be considered here is the leverage concept, meaning how many times the public funds are multiplied. And it's intended that a minimum 5.5 leverage to be reached. Worth to mention is the potential capital relief this instrument can bring to the financial intermediary. Given the EAF status as multilateral development bank and subject to local regulatory requirements, it might be possible for the financial intermediary to apply a 0% risk-weighted assets for the counterparty risk on the covered part of the social entrepreneurship loan. The next slide will list the variety of financial intermediate institutions that can apply for this program. Banks, cooperative banks, saving houses, debt funds, various types of non-financial institutions. A quick overview on the investment cycle, on the process to be followed between the expression of interest and contract signature and monitoring. The call of expression of interest will be published on the EIF website immediately upon signing the easy delegation agreement next week. The next two slides detail the minimum information requirements we would like to see in an application to be able to assess it and potentially select it. It's a clear general description of the intermediary, the financial standing with annual reports for the last 3 years, the basic operating principles that the financial institution is applying during its activity. The next slide, please. An overview on your loan or investments portfolio, a bit of wording on pricing policy, the credit risk track record. It's very important data for determining the cap rate. In case of social impact funds and in case of a startup, a greenfield institution, we should consider other data here, so probably the business plan and your expectations will be measured. And of course, the measures you are proposing to increase access to and availability of financial services for social entrepreneurship under EASY. The next slide explains the due diligence process. It's an off-site due diligence during the pre-selection phase and then on-site visit during 1 or 2 days maximum visit at the head office of the financial intermediary. Here we check the origination potential, the feasibility of your business plan and or investment strategy, and it's mainly intended to determine the cap rate through the analysis of the vintage tables. Upon concluding the contract, the guarantee agreement, the financial intermediary has some reporting obligations toward the EIF, the next slide, who on its turn prepares the implementation reports for the European Commission. Monitoring and follow-up of the implementation is done on a frequent basis, either through desk reviews or visits to the intermediary. As the EASY program is a central mandate of the European Commission and is using public money allocated from the EU budget, implementation of EASY could be subject to audit by the European Court of Auditors. Next slide shows you how to be informed about the EIF products and the programs dedicated to inclusive finance. Is the EIF website, the Commission website, and our microfinance team led by Per-Erik Eriksson, whose contacts Andrea prepared earlier. You are more welcome to address questions today or later on next week if you want, when the call will be published on our website. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christina, for this very comprehensive presentation. I'm sure all the participants can see that there's a lot of very useful information on these slides, and I also wanted to let them know that the PowerPoint under PDF format will be also loaded on our website next week, so they can have access to this information again. And once again, I would invite people to, if they have questions, if you have questions about this guarantee mechanism, to ask Andrea or Christina, feel free to write it down in written form, and we'll use them at the end of the webinar. So basically, this brings us to our next speaker, Jaime Vera Calonge. He's also working at the European Investment Fund. And Jaime today will present us another initiative, a funding initiative for support of social business. And this is the Social Impact Accelerator. So I'll leave you the floor, Jaime. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. Yes, so my presentation will be focused first in introducing what is generally the EIF activity, briefly because, well, my colleague already, Christina, mentioned, but afterwards I will speak about the dedicated vehicle to invest in impact investing funds, which is called Social Impact Accelerator, SIA, and I will finish with some notes for those fund managers that may be considering on submitting a proposal to EIF under this program, explaining a bit what are the main pieces of information and process that we follow in that regard. So EIF is the prime provider of SME financing in Europe, tries to bridge this financing gap, and it does it through intermediaries. The main, let's say, areas of activity are equity, where I'm actually dedicated, guarantees, securitization, and microfinance. If we pass to the next slide. So here we see the full range of instruments that EIF deploys. And as you can see at the bottom, it covers SME financing on the different stages of SMEs, from pre-seed up until development phase, starting from technology transfer, microcredit, venture capital, and lower mid-market funds, and social impact funds, as well as portfolio guarantees. If we pass to the next slide. So the Social Impact Accelerator, SIA as we call it, was first launched in 2013, mid-2013, as a pilot initiative within EIF, and it's a public-private initiative. Actually, it's mainly the European Investment Fund who's supporting and committed a large part of the capital. But it also counts with two private investors, Deutsche Bank and Credit Cooperative. Still is in a fundraising mood, so probably we hope to welcome some additional private investors. So we act as a fund of funds. As I mentioned, it started in July 2013. We started with a fund size of close to 50 million euros. And we received a top-up end of 2014, what leaves us with an amount of 240 million euros investment capacity. So our mission is basically to invest in social impact funds that in turn will invest in social SMEs, the final beneficiaries. This is done, one of the main requirements will be that the funds do ultimately invest in when SMEs that are in operation, or has business, are incorporated or has operations in EU country or accession countries. Another of the, I'll speak in the next slide about here, actually, and the next one, about what is the concept that EIF has about social, what is that we understand as social enterprise. But I will also touch upon a bit on on the requirements and the strategy that ESIA is following. So far, and as I will also explain later on, we've invested in 7 funds, and we are planning to invest in up to 30 funds probably. We have a maximum, we can only commit up to 49% of the total fund size. We normally act as a lead investor within the fund. So trying to provide, as I will explain later on, with added value with a certain network, and actually building up a platform for fund managers to develop this new asset class ultimately. So what we understand for a social SME, so it's a business that ultimately, in the core of their business model is to solve a social or environmental issue. That having the particular element that is the intentionality. So this intentionality is basically shown by fixing or identifying metrics that are ultimately measured along the life of the business. In this chart, we see that there are what we based on our experience, we define as different concepts or business models that could match our definition of social enterprise. In this respect, so we see first in the left side we identify the social business model, let's say the more straightforward, which is the one that with the service that is producing ultimately, or the product they produce, they solve an identifiable problem. Another type would be the traditional business model run in a social way. So basically, this is a business model that incorporates in their value chain the solution of a problem. It has to be clearly differentiated from what we understand as the typical corporate social responsibility. And then the last type would be the one that is, because of where it is located geographically, actually it's solving already a social or environmental problem. If we jump into the next slide, here we are exemplifying a number of cases or portfolio companies of the funds that we've invested. And in this case, it's insane logic. For those that are not perhaps aware of what is the business model, ultimately through software is helping in developing communication skills for those with certain limitations on that. So this will be within the first type that we're saying, ultimately with the product is solving the social problem in this case. If we jump into the next slide, so here we're exemplifying how to identify the metric, and how to connect. Ultimately, is the process that is well explained by the EVPA generally, and consisting ultimately in identifying stakeholders of those problems, measuring what is the input, the output, the outcome, and ultimately the impact. In the next slide, here we are showing what are the funds where we have invested already. In the next slides, there's a bit more detail. So this Anda Social Venture Fund is a fund located in Germany. I won't get too much into detail, but well, it's a good example of funds that have applied and are ultimately eligible for this program. So if we could jump into the next. This is British Ventures. Is located in the UK. It's pretty innovative because it's dedicated to social impact bonds ultimately. So payment by results. If we jump into the next one, Impact Ventures, okay, UK. And if we could, Elinor, move to the next one. I think I just, since the presentation will be made available, I'll just go into the next slide. The next one. Here it goes. So this is a bit what we are planning in the next months within our objectives, and is to basically diversify through investments in different countries. The bulk of the proposals that we receive are coming from France, Paris, generally, and the UK, in some cases as well. Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands, but in the rest of Europe, Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, we see less and less. We are, as we were mentioning, still in fundraising period, so perhaps we'll top up in the course of this year our fund size. And if we jump into the next one, I'll just. Well, what we provide is with ultimately with knowledge, with network, and ultimately a value proposition to our investors. The platform for actually we are leveraging on EIF's knowledge on the investments in venture and the venture capital sphere. We've invested in more than 500 venture capitals funds, so we are using that platform to help build investment managers in the impact investing sphere, and we provide them with a network so to be able to exchange information and knowledge overall. If we just jump into the last slide, so here is a bit of detail on the basic information that for us EIF is needed in order to do a screening, a first screening of a proposal from a fund manager. So it is essential to have information about the investment strategy, the geographical focus, the stage of the companies that the fund is targeting, among others, in the track record of the team, and of course the description of the team, of the skills and the track record to see how it's been the experience overall together as a team, the fund size and basic terms and conditions. You'll see I've set up the link over there at the EIF website. So there is a bit more of information, but at any time feel free to contact me. In the last slide, you'll see who is part of this team. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much, Jaime. I mean, since the Social Impact Accelerator has been launched, we received a lot of questions at EVPA about, what is it for, who can apply, etc. And it's great to have very concrete examples of funds who already have the funding, and it's also very great to hear that there's more funding available for other funds. So I'm sure this information will be very much useful to the participants. Thank you very much, Jaime.
Sure, thank you.
So this brings us to the third part of our webinar, and for this part I'm inviting Joanna Cruz Ferreira She's working at the Social Investment Lab in Portugal, and Joanna will give us a presentation a bit different because it's explaining how her organization is dealing with European structural funds. So without further ado, I'll leave Joanna the floor. Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you, Eleanor. Good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I would like to thank EVPA for this opportunity. The Social Investment Lab is a very proud member of EVPA, and we are always very keen on contributing for you guys to achieve your mission. And so, as I've been kindly asked to by EVPA in this webinar, I'm going to present a concrete Portuguese real-life story that aims at illustrating how the European structural funds can be used to promote social innovation and to create a social investment market in the member states of European Union, and this is obviously a Portuguese case. Next slide, Eleanor, please. So before jumping into concrete story, let me just introduce you the Social Investment Lab, Laboratório de Investimento Social in Portuguese, where I work at. The lab was created less than 2 years ago with the support of Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation and IES Social Business School in partnership with Social Finance UK. And we position ourselves as being a social investment intermediary. And we basically aim at disseminating international best practices on social investment and to test their applicability in the Portuguese context. And given the development stage of the market, and as the numbers showed illustrate, we have been, this is translated into our work being for example, the launch or supporting the launch of the first social impact bond in Portugal, which was in the education area. For example, we have published already 7 research notes on different social investment topics. We have also launched a task force for social investment, the Portuguese Social Investment Task Force, as the UK and Canada have done. We've been supporting this work. And for example, we also have a seed research program in which some master's students are conducting research on feasibility studies in order to assess whether different and innovative financial instruments can be applied in Portugal. And so the real next slide. The story that I bring you today is about Portugal Inovação Social, so Portugal Social Investment in English. And this initiative was established by the Portuguese government under the scope of the new wave of European structural funds allocated to Portugal from 2014 to 2020. The partnership agreement signed by the EU and Portugal, which is called Portugal 2020, regulates the allocation of 25 billion euros to Portugal, and from these 25 billion, 41.9% come from the European Social Fund. And in order to better accommodate the mobilization and the allocation of these funds, Portugal created a new domain of intervention recently, which is social inclusion and employment, and this domain will be receiving 4.4 billion euros. And it's within this domain that Portugal Inovação Social, Portugal Social Innovation, was created. And Portugal Social Innovation is a pioneer model in continental Europe, and it represents a milestone for our country and a milestone in the promotion of social investment in Portugal. It has a very concrete mission, a groundbreaking mission of catalyzing social investment markets in the country. It is endowed with 150 million from these new domain of social inclusion and employment. It was established by the Portuguese government and approved by the Cabinet Council, and it is a quango, so a quasi-autonomous non-governmental organization, which is a hybrid model of autonomy. The Social Investment Lab, since this was created, the Social Investment Lab has been providing some technical assistance to set it up, and this is why I'm here talking about it. Next slide, please. We can say that Portugal Inovação Social strategy relies on 4 pillars. So it has 4 programs. The first one is a wholesaler fund for social innovation that will co-invest in Portuguese social organizations that have demonstrated potential to generate social and financial return. So this structure or this fund is aimed at mobilizing capital and encouraging investment into social sector. So it will be acting as a cornerstone investor. It will be allocating capital into intermediaries, financial intermediaries, so not directly into social innovation projects. And it is required that these intermediaries fund social innovation projects through innovative financial instruments. And so for Portugal, innovative financial instruments can be unsecured debt capital or quasi-equity capital. The second program, it's an outcomes fund. This program will make available funding to local and regional governments in Portugal that are interested in developing social impact bonds. So it will be promoting the development of social impact bonds by helping the public sector paying for the results. And the other 2 compose what we call a platform for capacity building and market creation. One of them will be, which is the Venture Philanthropy Fund, will be providing match funding to philanthropist organizations that are committed to using a venture philanthropist approach to support social organizations, and this is to support them with both financial and non-financial support in order for them to become sustainable and effective. And this program obviously aims at promoting VP in Portugal and at creating a market of social investment intermediaries. And finally, the last one, still within this platform, is Social Sector Capacity Building Program. And this program will make grants available to social organizations to enable them to access and pay for support of specialists. And this is support that they cannot access nowadays because it doesn't exist. So it aims at creating supports in areas as financial management, business modeling, governance, leadership, and so on. And so, as you see, it's a wholesaler initiative structure that does not invest directly on social organizations, but aims at catalyzing the whole ecosystem. It combines both capital and technical assistance, or it aims at promoting the deployment of capital, but also at creating and promoting technical assistance. And it is not operational yet, but it will become in summer. So these last 2 programs will become will be operational in this summer, and the other 2 will be later on this year. Next slide. Also, Portugal Inovação Social will be used as a complement or as a way to strengthen public policy in Portugal in different social areas such as unemployment, poverty and social exclusion, health and well-being, and so on. It was designed to fulfill existing market failures in the support and in the instruments available to social organizations, and therefore it will co-invest, as I said, in social finance instruments and use subordinated capital to leverage other sources of capital through unsecured long-term and below rates, market rates loans, through quasi-equity instruments such as revenue participation agreements. It will also promote the development of different instruments, and this will be done through the social impact bonds promotion ecosystem, so the outcomes fund, and through the venture philanthropy fund. And also, as I told you, it will be promoting the capacity building of social sector organizations in areas that do not exist in Portugal right now. Next slide. These 4 programs of Portugal Inovação Social are structured in a way that they closely follow the development cycle of social organizations and social innovation programs. So this is that if we think that the social organizations have a natural life cycle that starts with in the first phase, focusing on a specific social problem and developing an effective solution, and then stage 2, consolidating their business models, and then preparing their growth, and finally implementing or disseminating their solutions in a general way. The programs are structured in a way that the first 2 are present in these first phases of development, and so to support the initial stages enterprises, and the other 2 are positioned or were constructed to help the organizations after being investment ready to expand, to receive investment and to expand their intervention, and so to scale impact. So this is quite a suggestion that in the first, in initial phases, social organizations receive a lot of capacity building support and grants, combined with grants. And in the last phases of development, they have different financial instruments available to consolidate and to create more impact. Last slide, please. Oh, next slide. And here there are some objectives for Portugal Inovação Social listed. So objectives to be achieved by 2020. The first goal is to be a catalyst for social investment market in Portugal, and therefore to have important implications in the way we tackle social issues in the country. And this is based on the assumption that social problems are the starting point and the real motivation for social investment markets. And so, as we know that they represent high social and economic burdens, and social sector organizations have limited means to operate, even though they are the best positioned to do so and to tackle them. If we create adequate financing forms, it might facilitate the development of more efficient and effective solutions for social investment for social problems. The next objective is to lay down, so to prepare a well-functioning social investment market in Portugal. And so this is to say that being aware that any market needs a robust infrastructure to operate efficiently and effectively. So the Portugal Inovação Social will not only, as I said, be concentrate and focus on building the supply and the demand side of the market, but also at creating the intermediation needed and the information systems and the market intelligence institutions for it to develop, for the market to develop. Also, it will be creating new deals and to generating learnings to be a cornerstone investment to activate the market, to put the machine into action, basically. The third objective is to address the main current market failures, and this is why all the programs make sense and then are developed in order to satisfy existing needs of social organizations and help them evolve and develop and become more resilient and robust. The next objective, the fourth one, is to activate social investment ecosystem among potential relevant stakeholders and to promote hubs of social investment at regional levels, and this is to decentralize the action and the market from the big cities in the country. And finally, it aims at shifting the culture of public sector, towards outcome-based commissioning, and therefore to contribute to the achievement of best value for money in public procurement of social services, and so to shift the social sector and all the ecosystem towards the creation of value. And finally, next slide, I would like to invite you to attend our event that is happening in 1 week in Lisbon on the 25th and 26th of June. And this event is promoted by the Social Investment Lab, Portugal Inovação Social, e Carlos Gulbenkian and Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation. And if you cannot attend because it's in Lisbon, I can tell you that it will be there will be a live streaming channel, so you can follow what is happening here. Next slide, please. We will have, this is a two days event, so we'll have a lot of speakers. The first day will mostly be about celebrating social innovation in the world, the best that exists in the world. And the second day will be a more institutional day, and we'll be having Uli Graben-Water from the European Investment Fund and Social Investment Accelerator leader. We'll also be having Marianne Thyssen from the European Commission and the DG for Employment, Social Affairs, Skills and Labour Mobility, and of course the President of Portugal Inovação Social, and they will all be discussing the development of social investment markets and the way to go, or the roadmap for 2020. Also, on the same day, the second day, the 26th, I'd like to tell you that that Lisa from EVPA will also be moderating a session on the role of foundations in adopting venture philanthropy to support social organizations. And I invite you all to come or to attend some way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Joanna, for this great presentation. At EVPA, we are very impressed by the fantastic ecosystem that you are building out in Portugal, and I also wish you the best for your forum next week. This basically closes our presentation part, and we can start more of a Q&A session. So maybe I can leave the floor to Lisa. I know there's been quite a few questions, and I'll look at those in a minute, the written questions you've all asked. But in the meantime, I'll let the floor to Lisa so that she probably has a few questions for our panelists. Lisa, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Eleanor, and thank you very much to all the panelists, because this has been really fascinating. I just wanted to ask a few questions that to me would be sort of clarification questions, and then we would move on to the questions from the audience. So my first question is really about the social entrepreneurship guarantee, and I guess that since it hasn't been launched yet, and I don't have sort of yet a kind of more practical experience of this, I was wondering if you could kind of, maybe Andrea and Christina, you could go back to and look at it from, or explain it from a more practical level in terms of I'm a venture philanthropy or a social investment fund based in Europe, and I want to access somehow this funding. How do I actually go about this? And maybe this will be sort of repeating a little bit what you've said, but at least to me this was still, I'm a little bit unsure, how exactly I go about doing this. So could you just say a few words about that? That would be my first question. And my second question goes to Jaime. And this is really about the social impact accelerator. And I'm wondering how your selection criteria and the way you define the social enterprise and also the kind of funds that you're investing in, how that is sort of aligned with more the EU policy. So in terms of the social enterprise definition, that is it used in EC that Andrea and Christina were mentioning, and also how whether you have some sort of criteria that you need to be registered as a USEF in order to be invested in by the SIA. So that is for Jaime. And then a third question is going then to Joanna. And it's more about how you actually then from the beginning access the funding. And if I'm sort of considering that we have members in 25 other countries in Europe, and perhaps someone would like to do something similar, what would be your recommendations for other countries that would like to sort of replicate what you're doing currently in Portugal? So those are sort of the three sets of questions. So maybe we could start with the social entrepreneurship guarantee. And concretely, I'm sort of now imagining that I'm a social investment or venture philanthropy fund, and I want to start sort of accessing that funding. How do I do that?
Yes, Andrea from the European Commission. I think that Christina is indeed better placed to reply to this question because the EIF is implementing.
Okay, and so you are a social investment fund which gives loans, debt financing to various social enterprises in your portfolio. For these loans, you need a collateral, a guarantee. If you apply to the easy guarantee, to EIF for getting this easy guarantee, EIF will guarantee for you 80% of each one of the loans you are giving to the social enterprises. Whenever this loan is getting non-performing and is getting as a loss loan in your portfolio, and the definition of the non-performance and the definition of when the loan is becoming a loss belongs to you, to the social fund. It's based on your internal policies, corporate documents. You may call for this guarantee to the EIF. And you will call guarantees for 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 loans that are defaulting in your portfolio until the value of the cap rate is reached. I'm sorry, I cannot write to give you a very practical example, in the sense that let's consider that we have we agree when making the guarantee agreement that you will build up a portfolio of about 10 million euros. A 10 million euros portfolio up with an 80% cap rate, with an 80% guarantee rate, it means that EIF is guaranteeing 8 million euros with a cap rate of, let's make it 10% because it's easy calculation, which makes an available budget for this guarantee as of 800,000. So the 800,000 is the allocated budget for this specific contract for the loans that will be defaulting in the next years. The guarantee is valid, Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, but is valid up to 6 or up to 10 years. I think for social entrepreneurship is 10 years, but I'm not fully sure. Is up to 10 years from the moment the social loan was signed between the fund, the social fund, and the social entrepreneur. So this loan can default in the next basically 10 years. I hope I answered the question. Hello?
Yes, thank you very much. I think at least to me this was quite clear. And I guess that if you have as participants further questions, you can then post them also in the question panel. So the second one is to Jaime, and it's more about you know, the definitions that you use, and if that's you know, how that corresponds to the social enterprise definition of the Commission, and also if the funds are necessarily or they can be USEF funds.
Sure, thank you for the question, Lisa. So I will say we build it up, our concept of social enterprise. We build it up based on the Commission's definition. However, for us, the core elements of to be identifiable as a social SME would be first, as I was saying, to have a business model that ultimately is solving in any of the three ways that I was mentioning in my presentation, is solving a social or environmental problem. So the entrepreneur has to identify that problem. Then it has to have an intention on solving the problem. So intentionality is another key element. Another one would be being able to set to identify metrics and be able to identify, I mean, to measure ultimately the impact achieved along the life of the enterprise. It has to be sustainable in itself, so no grant dependable, and a scalable business model. So having said so, we introduce a structure as investors in funds by which we ask fund managers to sit together with the entrepreneurs and identify what would be the objectives during the lifetime of the investment of the fund in that enterprise. So it has to be identified, again, all these topics, identify the problems, set the metrics, and along the life, I measure the impact performance. So we do believe in a concept that entails a sort of a positive correlation in between ultimately the return, the impact return, and the financial return. But at the same time, we incentivize along the chain fund managers and entrepreneurs to set objectives, and ultimately what we do is linking the carry interest of the fund manager up to certain thresholds to the impact performance.
Thank you very much. And on the question on the USEF?
Not necessarily. So it's not. We base our analysis on a case-by-case basis. So we spend quite a lot of time analyzing the impact theory of the fund manager and how this analysis is run when the fund manager decides to invest in a portfolio company. We ask for a seat in the advisory committees of the fund managers to have sort of an oversight of those achievements in the impact metrics and so on along the chain. But it's not that we ask for specific requirements such USEF or even specific standards of measuring the impact.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Jaime. I just then would like to address the question to Joanna about recommendations that you could give to other countries in terms of trying to replicate what you have done in Portugal.
Thank you very much, Lisa. These are very thoughtful questions. And so, as I understood, you posed me two questions. The first one regarding how can the countries convince that something like these. It's clear that it has to be clear that this was an outcome of the agreement between the country and the government and the European Commission, which ended up deciding allocating 150 euros to Portugal Inovação Social. So this is the agenda of our government, and if how there are some things that we all can do in our member countries. One of them is advocacy to the government, and what we have been doing in Portugal and has been quite successful in that end is the creation or the launch of a national task force to do advocacy near to the most influential policymakers and most influential institutions in the countries in order to set up this agenda. And national task forces have emerged in some years ago. The first one was in the UK, the next one in Canada. Even the G8 have launched the global national task force in order to promote this market. They have been quite successful. All the recommendation that this group, when I mean task forces, it's a gathering of senior representatives of influential institutions that gathered in order to reflect about this, the development of these markets. They have been quite successful. In the end, they recommend some procedures for the market in those places to develop, and most of the recommendations have been put in place. This is what we have also been doing in Portugal. So to help informing the relevant policymakers and the relevant decisors in our decision makers in our country. The second, I don't know if I answered it. If I answered to your question, but I'll jump to the next one. And the second question on whether if there's a venture philanthropist in the country, how can it access the funding provided by Portugal Inovação Social? I can tell you that these programs are not operational yet, so they haven't started. That open calls will be made starting in the summer, and so it's just a matter of waiting for it to be all set up. And each call for each of these specific instruments will have specific guidelines that one has to meet. And until there, or meanwhile, Portugal Inovação Social has been doing a wide consultation across relevant stakeholders from all the sectors in the economy, so social sector players, private sector, public sector, in order to better fine-tune and to better set these guidelines to make them affordable, not in a way of pricing, but in a way that it makes sense and it suits the market needs. And so it's just a matter of waiting and for it to start.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you very much for this.
Okay, thank you very much. We now. Yeah, go ahead, Eleanor.
Yeah, sorry, Lisa. Thank you for having kicked off this Q&A session. We now have 15 more minutes, and I just had a look at the questions that were written by our participants. There are quite many, so we are going to try to address most of them during the last 15 minutes of this webinar. And if they are not answered, we will make sure that you get an answer afterwards. So to start this, I think this first question goes to Andrea. I'll read it out loud and then I'll let you reply. So the question is, how do you check in choosing the social enterprise, the third aspect of the social enterprise definition of the EASY program, which is managed in an entrepreneurial, accountable and transparent way, in particular by involving workers, customers and stakeholders affected by its business activities. So this is really a question related to the definition of social enterprises according to the Commission. And Andrea, if you can give us an answer.
Okay, yes, a social enterprise has to be managed in an entrepreneurial way. This is to make sure that we don't care about the legal form, that it's really enterprises, so it should make a profit. And then the second part is about accountability, transparency, and we implement this by this measurement of social impact, which I explained before. In concrete terms, the EIF signs a contract with the intermediary, and the social impact measurement requirement is an integral part of this contract. So it's really an obligation. Now, how it is checked, I would like to give the floor to Christina. Christina, maybe you can explain how you intend to check it.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. EIF doesn't work directly with the social enterprise. It works through the financial intermediary. When doing a visit, an on-site due diligence with a financial intermediary, their lending policies are checked, and we know that in general any financial institution that lends to any kind of enterprise, not only social enterprise, is quite diligent in checking the viability of that respective business. For the social entrepreneurship part, we will also check how the financial institution is assessing the impact that respective social enterprise has on the market or on the community it develops its business.
And maybe to still add, the social enterprises make a report on their social impact, and this report has to be given to the intermediary, and the intermediary passes it on to the EIF and then to the Commission. So we indeed see that this requirement is fulfilled.
Thank you very much, Christina and Andrea, for this first answer. I'll let Lisa ask another of our participants' question right now.
So I've noticed that there are a few questions on the social impact accelerators. I would like to just address those to Jaime. So one question is about, well, it goes as follows. I would like to ask if there's a minimum percentage for the EIF to participate in a fund, and which is the minimum amount. Another question is the SIA fund having a preference to invest in funds that are specifically focused on a particular sector, or is there a preference for generalist funds? Let's see, and then there's also another question addressed about the SIA, which, let's see where it was, and I think you have already addressed it, which is more about the amount that you have of 241 million, if you were planning to increase that. And I think you did say that you would try to do that. There's also a question on, which I think is actually about EASY, so I'll leave that for later.
Yeah, so on the first question, there's no minimum amount to say. What we have is a percentage-wise limit, which is up to 49.9% of the total fund size. So above that, we cannot commit. Now, when we do an assessment of a fund proposal, we make sure that ultimately the economics are well, make sense actually, and ultimately our role tends actually is one of our main goals is to try to attract additional capital to the fund, so help on the fundraising in the sense of setting through mainly setting standards and doing a thorough due diligence process. So answering the question, basically we have no minimum fund size. We play together mainly these two elements when assessing what would be the fund, the commitment that we will do on a specific fund. Regarding the second question, the particular sector, if there is sector focus yet, or if we prefer specific sectors or generalistic funds, our perception is that the market still in the impact investment scene is still at a very early stage. So we don't see funds specialized per sector yet. Probably because of the size of depending on the market that they will be located in, there may not be specific sufficient deal flow to just focus or tackle a specific sector. So overall, we see generalistic funds with the core of, having in the core of their strategy to have an impact investing approach overall. Yeah. So I hope I respond to
Thank you,
questions.
thank you, Jaime, for these answers. My turn to take a few questions actually for Christina. I think these are really questions that are relating practical aspects of the guarantee mechanism. The first two questions for Christina. The first one is, let me find it back. The first question is, okay, I'll read it. To qualify as an intermediary, how many years track record do you need? For example, this person is saying that the Portuguese organization is quite a new one. So do you need to have many years of activity before you can qualify? So that's one question. And the second one is more technical also, is about the 5.5 leverage aspect that you presented in your presentation. So can you explain a bit more about that 5.5 leverage? Thank you.
Sure. To start with, how many years a financial intermediary has to be present in the market for in order to qualify as an intermediary to the EIF. Let's say we are working also with greenfield institutions and we are working with long-time established institutions. We would prefer, for the guarantee products, we would prefer to have a track record on their previous debt financing granted to their social entrepreneurs or to their similar group of customers. But if it's a new institution and we will try to assess their business plan, their expectations on the development of the portfolio, how or when do they expect part of the portfolio to become non-performing, even to default. So we cannot set a fixed number of years of business history for a financial intermediary. The assessment process will go through different paths. On the leverage topic, I think if we go back to our numerical example earlier to one of the Lisa's questions, we said there that we agreed for the financial intermediary to build up a 10 million portfolio with the 80% guarantee rate means that EIF will guarantee 8 million on a loan-by-loan basis from this portfolio, with a cap rate set at 10%, which means that the budget allocation for this guarantee will be 800,000. If we divide the 10 million euros, the portfolio that the intermediary will build up, to the 800,000, the public money used for this project, we end up with a 12.5 multiplier. This is the leverage we are talking about. In the EASY program, we are required to obtain a minimum 5.5 leverage, which means that in terms of guarantee rates and guarantee caps, we can have the combinations that were mentioned in the presentation, in the sense that if we are guaranteeing 80% of a portfolio, the maximum cap rate will be 22.7. While if we have a client who wants or has to reach the 30% cap rate, then the guarantee rate on the loan-by-loan basis will be reduced to 60%. I hope it was
yes, thank you, Christina. I think it was very useful to have
explanatory.
Yes, thank you. Lisa, maybe you can raise another few questions.
Yes, so there was a question about the guarantee and the cap rate. I think that you just explained that. And then there's a question about whether the guarantees can be applicable to loans given to social enterprises outside of Europe. There's also another one which is also addressing investments or that are done in outside of the European countries, and whether there are others programs perhaps then that they would need to apply for. And I guess another question which is also on the EC social entrepreneurship guarantee is about whether the question goes, does the intermediary carry 100% of the risk once the allocated budget has been exhausted? So perhaps you could, maybe Andrea and Christina, you could address those questions.
Yeah,
Andrea, you want to take the geographical part?
Yes, I take the questions on the geographical coverage. So the question was about intermediaries operating outside Europe or established outside Europe. So actually, the intermediaries have to be established in the EU or in Turkey and Iceland, and also operate in these countries. So the geographical coverage does not go beyond. And I think there was one question particularly on Afghanistan. Afghanistan is neither a candidate country nor a potential candidate, so it will definitely not become a participating country even in the future. And the question was if there are other programs here. Unfortunately, I don't know. This would have to look at the Commission website of DevCo, DevCo. Thanks.
Okay, coming back to the question on the if the intermediary takes 100% of the risk after the budget is finished, let's say. In theory, yes. Based on our experience with microfinance guarantees, we did not reach yet portfolio and cap amount fully reached, and the intermediary to be left without cover. So that's why we spend a lot of time in assessing the potential risk of the portfolio and establishing the cap rate for that respective portfolio, in order to be as close as possible to the risk profile of the financial intermediary.
Okay, thank you very much, Christina and Andrea. I think there's just one final question that we haven't addressed. I mean, there's some other questions that are perhaps very specific, and we will try to address over email. But it's more about the hybrid nature of sort of the way you can best support social enterprises. So here the participant is saying that there are actually not very many social finance investors that offer hybrid finance, combining loans or grants with patient loans, and that we also need to educate the supply side. And she's asking if EC foresees any tool for this. For example, will the diversity of the financial instruments offered by the intermediary be a criterion when assessing the proposals received, or will the EIF support intermediaries to develop new products to better satisfy the demand? So it's really about sort of building the market and how you're dealing with that aspect.
Of course, the social guarantee under EASY, it's a new product for the market, for all of us. What I can say based on the experience we have with the microfinance guarantee that we implemented on behalf of DG Employment in the previous programming period. In general, we are working together with the intermediary to, let's say, further develop their application. They proposed us a product, and we help them, if you want, to develop that product or to add some additional features that the market was requiring. We had cases where the initial product proposed by the intermediary was not very successful on the market, so we went back and redesigned the guarantee agreement and redesigned the product to better match the market requirements, the market needs. I assume we will do the same for the social entrepreneurship guarantee, but being a very new product for the market, for both us as the implementer of the program, and for the market that for the intermediaries that we will use this program, this product, I wouldn't go into more details now. I think we all are here to build up the market, so we will develop and will adjust ourselves to the market needs in the due course of time.
Thank you very much, Christina. I think from the number of questions that we have received today, we can clearly say that this topic of European funding to support social business and social, venture philanthropy and social investor is a very timely one. Unfortunately, this is already the end of this session. It's 4:33 even. We'll make sure that you get an answer to your question if it couldn't be replied during the webinar. You can also drop us an email if you want to have a very precise answer. And this brings us to the end. So I would really like to take this last slide to thank again warmly our four panelists, Andrea, Jaime, Christina, and Joanna. It was very interesting to listen to you today. I think we have learned a lot. We will still learn a lot in the future, but this gives us a lot of very useful information. I also want to thank the participants to this webinar. You were quite many online. We really hope that you found this session useful. So this has been recorded. It will be posted on our website next week, together with the presentation in PDF format. And maybe I should just close by mentioning that we are planning to have our next webinar in September, on the 23rd of September, and the idea is to address the reform of European public procurement markets. So with this being said, I will close the webinar. Thank you again, everyone, for participating, and see you next time. Thank you. Bye.